So I think this is just how I'm gonna have to start all of my videos over the Christmas season. Oh man, Nova. Ugh. There we go. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Britt, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you probably should, because I talk about geeky things. And sometimes I sit on my couch in agony recording videos. And I am still in a little bit of pain, but at least enough to function at this point. Like, I'm out of pain enough to function at this point. So, I'm still taking it very easy, but I can stand and make a video for a minute. So today we're going to talk about kind of my overall feelings on season 1 of Beast Morphers. It was mediocre at best. Okay, bye. Kidding. So yeah, it was mediocre at best in my opinion. I feel like it was still very Neo Saban. And mind you, like I've said many times, this is not Neo Saban, because it is still, you know, the same team that is running it. Saban is still attached. Saban still had creative control over how this season was written and casted. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. You know, the fact that they have dropped Saban's name from the logo at this point now for season 2. We're not doing a super season. Obviously, Hasbro is taking some creative control for season 2, which is great. But still, the casting is still obviously the same. And mind you, we're going to talk about the casting in just a minute. The casting is not terrible. The casting is actually pretty good. I feel like the way that some of the certain characters are executed are not so great. Still, I mean, I feel like Saban still had way too much control over this season. And at the end of the day, Saban is not a good storyteller. And that's just the truth of the matter. Chip Lin has his moments of good. You know, RPM was one large moment of good. But this season just showcases that maybe it's time for Power Rangers to move on to a new showrunner. I mean, if anything, maybe it's going to be the opposite of Dino Charge, where the first season of Dino Charge was great, and the second season was terrible. But maybe this one, the first season is going to be rough, and then the second season is going to be amazing. Who knows? We'll see what happens when season 2 starts airing. So let's kind of break down some of my thoughts of the entire season. So let's start with the overall story. I feel like the overall story is actually pretty cool. I do like when there's more of a story versus it being, hey, this evil person's trying to destroy the world, let's stop her. You know, like the first season, the first few seasons, like Mighty Morphin in general, there really wasn't an overarching story. It was literally just, Rita's attacking the world, let's stop her. Oh no, Rita's gone, now it's Zed, let's stop him. Oh, Rita and Zed got married, oh no, let's stop them. You know, there wasn't like this overarching story. The Zordon era became an overarching story over time that did build on itself and then came to fruition in space. But you know, you think about it and it's like you had this long build to this final season and it just like it was like one, I mean, people like to call Turbo just the longest pilot episode for in space. The longest pilot episode ever, which, mind you, we're going to talk about pilot episodes one day because people use pilot episode incorrectly a lot. There is one official aired pilot for Power Rangers. There were a couple of unaired pilots for Power Rangers, but a first episode is not just a pilot. You cannot say the first episode. Anyway, that's a whole different video. Let's just... Anyway, so I do like when there's an overarching story. So you take, like, Time Force. You take all of my favorite seasons of Power Rangers. There is an overarching story. Time Force, Mystic Force, RPM, In Space. There's all these, you know, Lost Galaxy. There are these overarching storylines that are not just save the world or save the space colony in the sense of Lost Galaxy, save Miranoi in the sense of Lost Galaxy, which that's really not, but it... You know, if you've seen Lost Galaxy, you know what I'm talking about. I feel like this one had a nice overarching story. And I feel like it was a story that wasn't necessarily done before necessarily. I mean, I'm sure it's been done. But, like, it felt original to Power Rangers. Like, it felt like a new story to Power Rangers with, you know, obviously, we've got, like, kind of 2 different variations of Power Rangers that exist. We've got like kind of what I call like the Gorilla Rangers, you know, gorilla, like not like army gorilla, not the Beastbot, not Ravi's Beastbot kind of gorilla. But we have like the Guerrilla Rangers that are like, you know, Zordon's Rangers, or, you know, the Lost Galaxy. Yeah, those would count. Those would count. I would count those. Mystic Force, I would consider that, where it's not like an army regime or like a created police force or anything like that. But then you've got the I don't even know what to call it, the organized, I suppose, which would be like Lightspeed Rescue and SPD, you know, where they come from a police force, or they come from army, or they come from different forms of rescue facilities, that kind of thing. This one was kind of a mishmash of both, which I thought was kind of interesting, because obviously it was kind of not really an army regime, but definitely an organized idea of what the Power Rangers are going to be. And then two of the people that were supposed to be Power Rangers didn't become Power Rangers, and then these random people became Power Rangers. You know, the mayor's son and the laundry lady, you know, they became the Power Rangers. So it was an interesting mesh of both of those kind of formulas that Power Rangers has done since its infancy, which I thought was kind of interesting. I liked how the characters came to be. The only thing I would have maybe changed was make it a little bit harder for them to have all gotten along, because they were all strangers coming together. And I like the way that they started Dino Thunder. I like the way that they started Jungle Fury, in the sense of when strangers come together, they have trouble meshing right away, which I like. I think these guys just meshed too quickly right away, and I felt like that's the one thing I would change. But it's not like this, oh, I hate it now, it's terrible. It's not terrible, it's great. It's a nice overarching story that I enjoy. But there's just one thing that I would have changed, that I would have looked at and been like, okay, let's maybe make this a little bit more character driven in the results of, like, you put strangers together, you're going to have personality conflicts, and you should have personality conflicts. I mean, that's just realism. That's realistic kind of attitude, and it's, I think, important to have in kids shows to have personality conflicts, because it's important for kids to understand that they are not alone when there's a personality conflict at school, that when there's not a personality conflict, or when there's a personality conflict on this television show with these heroes who are supposed to be saving the world, and they're having personality conflicts. So when they're at school and they're having personality, and now I'm not talking about bullying, but a personality conflict, when they're just having a simple personality conflict with somebody at school, they can kind of relate that to Power Rangers. Then I feel like if we're going to keep it a kid's show, then we need to make it educational for kids. And like I said, subtext. And I've talked about that before. Subtext. I feel like that would have been an interesting subtext to use, is to have them have this kind of personality conflict as a way of teaching kids that personality conflicts just happen. Because I remember growing up and thinking that there was no such thing as personality conflicts, because I grew up with this unrealistic idea of what high school was going to be, thanks to Power Rangers, because you had these jocks in Jason and Zach, you had the cheerleader Kimberly, and you had the nerdy girl Tarini, and you had the super geeky guy, you know, Billy, and then you had this kind of loner Tommy, and they all come together and they're like, oh, best friends, when that is not what high school is like. At least the high school that I went to, this is not like that at all. That, granted, was a very small, I graduated with a class of 96 people, so we all knew each other. Half of us had known each other since kindergarten. I feel like Power Rangers needs to go into more of a realistic sense of tone with that. But anyway, that's a whole different thing. But like I said, that's the one thing I would have changed, is just to add a little bit more personality conflict at the beginning, especially, maybe with Nate, because Nate was supposed to be so much younger than the other Rangers, because, I mean, the actual actor is quite a bit younger. He was actually like a teenager. I think he turned 18 after they stopped filming, or like while they were filming, he turned 18. Anyway, I don't know. And the others are all kind of in their 20s, to kind of indicate, I don't think the characters are in their 20s. I'm pretty sure the characters are all teenagers, but the actors are all, in their 20s, except for Nate's actor, Abraham. And I felt like that was supposed to kind of give this mentality that maybe there's a couple years difference between them. And I just think there would have been an interesting kind of thing to do with personality conflict. And they did personality conflicts, but they did personality conflicts with the B-spots. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I felt like there was a lot more they could have done with characterization, but for the most part, I felt like the overarching story was great. So let's talk about characters. So the characters, I think, are very good. I don't really dislike any of them too much, except for Ben and Betty and their father. But I think their father was I think the guy who plays their father is just a terrible actor. And if it was intentional, then they should have given it a reason to be intentional for him to be very, very robotic. But I don't know. I felt like his actor was just terrible. We're going to get into the actors later, but he's such a minor character that we're not going to talk about his actor as much, so we'll just throw that in here. But as you guys know, I'm not the biggest fan of Ben and Betty. I'm not the biggest fan of slapstick comedy, especially if it's not done well, and I feel like it was not done well in this at all. I feel like Ben and Betty, I think their actors are fine. I have nothing against their actors. I need to see them in other things to make sure that they're actually like good actors versus just being green actors. But they were put into this situation where they had to do slapstick comedy, and slapstick comedy just is not an easy thing to do well. And so when you're such a green actor, it's so hard to accomplish. And I'm sure that that is like their dream. Both of them, I think, you can tell, have a big passion for comedy. And I'm not saying that they're bad at comedy. I just don't like the slapstick aspect of their comedy. And I think that that's a combination of the writing, the situation, the characterization, and how they were directed. So it's like, I don't put any blame on the actors at all. I think the actors do just fine. All of the different characters are so different in their archetypes and in their like kind of places that they are. You can tell that these actors, while green, have done well in kind of experiencing their characters. Now, I'm not huge into method acting, but what I am into is understanding your character. And not like the, what is my motivation kind of way, but like, at the same time, what is my motivation? Essentially, what I've always looked at as an actor is, who is my character? What is my character's life story? And what has led my character to this moment? And that's not method acting. Method acting, if you guys are unfamiliar with what method acting is, I'm going to maybe do another video, not another video, but a video about acting and all the different acting styles. But method acting is reaching into your past and finding something from your past to give you the same emotion that your character would have. I find that to be such a weird way to go about acting, because your character and you have different pasts and you guys are going to react differently. So I don't know. I've never liked method acting. I think method acting is silly. I've never enjoyed the concept of it. I like more of the character study, the character criticism, and being able to go, okay, so if this character got to this point, what led her to this point? What led my character to this point where I can play her effectively? And I feel like the characters and the actors with the characters have done a very good job, especially the Power Rangers and then Roxy and Blaze have all done a very good job at kind of depicting that. Honestly, when it comes to the main actors, I really don't think there's a bad actor among them. I think all of them are very green, so they all have their moments of crappiness, but that could also be part of the directing. That could also be part of the writing. I feel like, once we get into it, I'll get more into it. Well, let's just jump into that. So the writing. The writing, I feel like, is also very green. I feel like the people who are writing these episodes don't write conversationally. And that's one of the things about screenwriting that you need to make sure you do. Any time that you're doing screenwriting or playwriting or anything like that where you're actually going to have people physically talking, you do have to write conversationally. And I know in prose as well, in literature, you're supposed to write conversationally when the character actually having dialogue. But that's not as important in literature as it is in screenwriting and playwriting. And I know, writers, you are going to get on me for that, but trust me, I have studied literature, I have studied screenwriting, and I have studied playwriting. Playwriting and screenwriting are both it is a much more focused on item, because both of those mediums are playwriting is more dialogue driven than screenwriting. Screenwriting is very, very blocking oriented, so it's very descriptive, but it's very descriptive in a very different way than, say, literature is. And like I said, that's actually a very interesting video that I'm kind of planning in my head about why you shouldn't be judging a movie by its book, because of how just the two mediums are so very different. But I feel like they weren't very conversational. I feel like a lot of the things that the actors are forced to say are very awkward, and you can tell that the actors are not feeling comfortable with what they're saying, and so that comes off as awkward. So while I think all the actors are very good actors, and I'm very excited to see their careers do well, I think that Liana and Abraham are the two big standout actors from that cast. I really honestly do. They've got great careers ahead of them. They're just green, and they have to learn more and more and more. And I think Liana probably has more of an establishment in acting than I think Abraham does. I think Abraham is still very green. I feel like they plucked him out of a high school play and stuck him in Power Rangers, just very green. And I mean, I've been there. I was in high school plays. At some point, I want to, with the ones that I actually have on VHS, want to get them on and react to them for the first time in many years. I've not watched them in many years. I feel like they're all very green, but they all are talented. They all have good careers ahead of them as long as they continue to study continue to do character study, continue to do acting theory study, continue to hone their skills, because acting is a skill. Yes, you have to have talent, kind of, but honestly, anybody, as long as they can make what they're reading not sound like they are reading, anybody can be a good actor. It's a skill that you have to keep building. It's a skill. It's like working out. You have to keep doing it to get better at it, to have it be more part of you. It's a skill that you have to build. And if you don't build that skill, it does go away. You start to lose that ability a little bit. And I feel like as long as they continue to do their studying, as long as they continue to learn, and they don't go, well, I'm good with where I'm at, and then they just stay there, as long as they continue to keep growing, I think they've all got great careers ahead of them. I'm very excited. I think out of all of them, the weakest actor for the season, I think, was Jazz. I feel like the guy who played Ravi, I think Jazz is probably the weakest actor out of all of them, which makes me very sad. But again, I don't know how much of that is his acting or if it was his directing, but I feel like he had weaker moments than a lot of the others in very similar scenes where they'd have the same director. So whether or not they had the same director every single episode, that doesn't matter. But like in certain episodes, you had strong actors and you had weaker actors, and I feel like Jazz was just consecutively the weakest actor in every single episode. So, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. He's still just green. It's not saying he's a bad actor. I'm just saying he was the weakest, probably the least educated in acting, the least studied in acting, probably the greenest out of everybody in acting, except for maybe Abraham. But I think Abraham just has this weird ability. I think he just has this incredible talent that is like forming. Well, who was it that said? I can't remember who it was that said, it might have been Michelangelo, that the statue is already in the block of cement, or is in this block of whatever it is they're using, and it's the artist's job to uncover it. I think Abraham is that same thing. I think Abraham is this incredible actor already there. You just have to uncover him. You just have to make it with that he's free. Where I think Jazz has definitely more studying that he has to do. But yeah, I think that the characters, the actors, I think they all have done very well. The writing, like I said, I think was very stale. I feel like the writing was also just very filled with holes, filled with all kinds of terrible holes that I've pointed out in every single episode pretty much. But I feel like it was stale. I feel like it was bland. I feel like it was just very, like I said, awkwardly written dialogue, which I feel like is very common with Power Rangers in general. I mean, even Disney had very awkward moments in their writing, because I think adults have trouble writing for children. I see it even in Dan Schneider shows. I love Dan Schneider on Nickelodeon. I love his shows. I have not watched much of his newer ones, but even that, I've been rewatching some of them recently. Like I've been rewatching Victorious, I've been rewatching a little bit of iCarly, a bit of Zoe 101, and like as much as the writing is hilarious and great, at the same time there are moments that's just really awkward, and I think it's because adults just have trouble writing for children, and I think that has to do a lot with the fact that we just don't think like children. We think like adults who are trying to think like children, and I don't know. That's about it. So all in all, I would probably, this season will not be anywhere near my top 10 ever, but I feel like this season was pretty good overall. I just feel like that it had a lot of weak moments, and I'm looking forward to season 2. I'm looking forward to seeing what season 2 has to offer. I'm looking forward to see what Hasbro does with the season. Now they're in a little bit more creative control, and looking forward to see what comes after Beast Morphers, because that will be the first time Hasbro is in full control of the show. So anyway, let me know what you guys felt about the first season of Beast Morphers in the comments below. Make your own videos, tag me on Twitter, let me know. I am very interested in what you guys thought of Beast Morphers Season 1. And I'll see you guys all when it comes to Power Rangers when Season 2 starts airing, and we're going to walk through Season 2 together. But until then, it'll just be Thursdays from now on until Season 2 starts airing, so I'll see you guys all on Thursday. I'll see you guys all next time. Bye. No, absolutely not. Stop it.